Did you know there's a city of nearly 200,000 people that you cannot drive to? Not because it's on an island, but because in the entire history of the country it belongs to, no one has ever built a single road that reaches it. It sits at the far eastern edge of Russia, closer to Alaska than to Moscow. To get there, you fly for 8 hours across 9 time zones, or you arrive by sea. And the ground it's built on is some of the most violent on the entire planet. A peninsula carrying more than 160 volcanoes, where just last year the Earth produced one of the 6 most powerful earthquakes ever recorded, and 7 volcanoes began erupting at the same time, something that hadn't happened here in nearly 300 years. And yet, right now, roughly 290,000 people call this place home. This is Kamchatka, and today we're going to travel down the one thin thread of road that exists on the whole peninsula, and then keep going, past the point where that road simply ends, to see how people actually live in Russia's land that the roads never reached. It only gets more remote and more extreme the further out we go. Out there is a village heated entirely by water from the volcanoes, with an open-air pool that never freezes even at 40 below. There are families who still follow herds of reindeer across the open tundra with no fixed home at all, resupplied only when a helicopter can find them. There's a town of 3,000 people with no road to it whatsoever, where the only way in is a flight so dangerous that in 2021, one of them ended with every single person on board dead. And at the very end of this journey is the reason any of it is possible, and the reason the whole peninsula was sealed off from the outside world for most of the last century. But let's start where almost everyone here begins, with the one real city on the peninsula, a place ringed by 3 enormous volcanoes, sitting on a bay so perfect that empires fought over it, and connected to its own country by absolutely nothing you can drive on. This is Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. Almost everyone who lives on Kamchatka lives here, in and around Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, a city of roughly 180,000 people wrapped around one of the great natural harbors on Earth, Avacha Bay. From a distance, it looks like an ordinary Russian city. Rows of Soviet apartment blocks, a port, buses, schools, a hockey rink. But look up, and 3 snow-capped volcanoes tower directly over the rooftops. The locals literally call them the home volcanoes. People here grow up with active volcanoes as the backdrop to their daily commute. Here's the part that's hard to believe until you sit with it. This is one of the largest cities in the world with no road connecting it to the outside. You cannot drive from Moscow to Petropavlovsk. You cannot drive here from anywhere beyond the peninsula, because no such road exists and never has. Everything a city of this size needs, cars, fuel, building materials, most of the food on the shelves, either flies in on a cargo plane or arrives by ship across the Pacific. That's why a simple bag of groceries here can cost far more than the same bag in Moscow. Almost every item has crossed thousands of kilometers of ocean or sky to reach the shelf. The city itself was born from exploration. It was founded in 1740 by the expedition of the Danish navigator Vitus Bering, and it's named after his 2 ships, the St. Peter and the St. Paul. For most of the 20th century, though, its name barely appeared on any map an ordinary person could see, because Kamchatka was a closed military zone. Foreign visitors were completely forbidden, and even Soviet citizens couldn't come here without special permission. The peninsula stayed closed to outsiders until 1989, and to foreigners until 1990, meaning that for most of living memory, this entire region was a blank, forbidden space at the edge of the empire. And there's a reason it was guarded so heavily, a neighbor just across the water that we'll come back to at the very end. For now, understand the starting point. Even the easiest, most normal life on Kamchatka means living in a city you can only leave by boarding a plane or a boat. And this is the connected part. Now we go looking for the one road out of town, and we follow it until it disappears. Leave Petropavlovsk heading north, and you'll pass through Yelizovo, the town that holds the peninsula's main airport, the front door for nearly everyone who arrives. Beyond it, you join what is essentially Kamchatka's single spinal road, a route running roughly up the middle of the peninsula, through the old settlement of Milkovo, toward the interior. On a map of a place this enormous, Kamchatka is around 1,200 kilometers long. Larger than many countries, it's almost nothing. One line, drawn up the center of a giant. And that line doesn't stay paved for long. Away from the city, the asphalt gives out and turns to gravel and packed dirt, dust in summer and ice in winter. There is no ring of highways here, no web of roads branching off to connect town to town the way they do almost everywhere else. Most of Kamchatka has no roads at all. The overwhelming majority of the peninsula is roadless wilderness, forest, tundra, volcano, and river. So how does anyone reach the places off that single line? In many parts of the far north and the interior, The answer in winter is the Zimnik, a winter road that isn't a road at all. It's a route that only exists when it's cold enough. A path ploughed and packed across frozen ground, frozen swamp, and frozen rivers, usable only in the depths of winter, and gone again the moment the thaw comes. For part of the year, these tracks are a lifeline. For the rest of it, they simply cease to exist, and the villages they served go back to being reachable only by air or by boat. That's the rhythm of life once you leave the city. Everything depends on the season, the weather, and the aircraft. And it means the further you travel from Petropavlovsk, the more your entire existence bends around one question. Can something reach you this week, or can't it? To see how people actually build a life out here, let's follow the road as far as it will take us, to a village so unexpectedly beautiful that people call it Kamchatka's Switzerland. Deep in the interior, cradled in a valley of forested mountains, is the village of Esso. After hours of driving the gravel spine of the peninsula, anywhere from 7 to 10 hours from Petropavlovsk with stops, you arrive somewhere that looks nothing like your idea of the frozen Russian Far East. Wooden houses, sharp green peaks, clear rivers. People call it Kamchatka's Switzerland, and for a settlement this remote, it is startlingly comfortable. The secret to that comfort is underground. Esso sits on top of a natural geothermal system. Hot springs rise out of the earth here at around 65 degrees Celsius. That's close to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and the village has been built to run on that heat. Instead of burning fuel that would have to be trucked in over hundreds of kilometers of bad road, Esso pipes hot water straight from the ground to warm its homes. It's used to heat greenhouses, so people can grow vegetables in one of the harshest climates on Earth. And in the center of the village, there's an open-air swimming pool fed by the springs that stays warm and unfrozen all year round. People swim outdoors in the steam, while the winter air around them drops far below freezing. A village warmed by the same volcanic forces that make the rest of Kamchatka so dangerous. Esso is also the heart of the Bystrinsky district, home to the Even people, one of Kamchatka's indigenous groups, traditionally reindeer herders. Their culture is still alive here in a way it isn't in most of the modern world. Every winter, the village hosts a reindeer herders festival, where herders come in from the surrounding lands for races and competitions. And Esso is one of the great stops on the Beringia, a dog sled race across Kamchatka that has been recognized as the longest sled dog race in the world, a route that in some years has stretched well over 2,000 kilometers across roadless country. When your land has no roads, the dog team and the reindeer sled aren't nostalgia. Their transport. Esso shows you the settled, rooted version of remote life. A real community with heat, food, and tradition hidden at the end of the road. But the Even and Koryak way of life didn't start in villages. To find the oldest way of living on Kamchatka, we have to leave the last road behind completely and go out onto the open tundra with the people who never stopped moving. Past the villages, past the last winter road, out on the enormous open tundra of the north and interior, there are still families who live the way people here lived for thousands of years, before Russia, before roads, before any of it. They are reindeer herders, from indigenous peoples like the Even, the Koryak, and the Chukchi, and their home is not a place. Their home moves with the animals. A herding brigade follows its reindeer across the seasons, hundreds of kilometers of migration in a year, because the reindeer must keep moving to find food, grazing the summer tundra, then the lichen they dig out from under the winter snow. The people move with them. They live in tents, break camp, and travel with the herd, in temperatures that in winter can plunge to 30 or 40 below zero. There is no electricity grid out here. No plumbing, no shop, no cell tower, no road, and no neighbor for 100 kilometers. The herd is the food, the clothing, the income, and the entire economy, all at once. So how do you resupply a family that has no fixed address on a peninsula with almost no roads? Often, the only answer is the helicopter. The Meters I-8 helicopter is one of the true lifelines of the Russian Far East. For the most isolated herders and settlements, it's how fuel, supplies, mail, medical help, and sometimes the people themselves get in and out. But a helicopter can only fly when the notorious Kamchatka weather allows it, and chartering one is enormously expensive. So for long stretches, these families are genuinely on their own, in one of the emptiest landscapes left on the planet, relying on skills passed down for 100 generations. It is one of the last truly nomadic ways of life on Earth, and it's shrinking. Fewer young people take it up each year, and the herds and brigades are fewer than they once were. But it's not gone. Right now, as you watch this, there are people out on the Kamchatka tundra with no walls around them, following the reindeer through the snow, exactly as their ancestors did before the first Russian ever set foot here. Now, From the people who choose to have no address at all, we go to an entire town that the road network forgot. On the remote northwestern coast of Kamchatka, facing the cold sea of Okhotsk, sits the town of Palana. This isn't a nomad camp or a tiny hamlet. It's an administrative capital, the center of the Koryak district, historically the heart of the homeland of the Koryak people. Around 3,000 people live here, and there is no road to it. None. You cannot drive to Palana from Petropavlovsk, or from anywhere else. For a place that functions as a regional capital, the only practical way in or out is to fly. That single fact shapes everything. When the only link between your town and the rest of the world is a small aircraft, the weather doesn't just ruin your travel plans, it can cut you off entirely for days. And the flying itself, over Kamchatka's mountains and fog and sudden storms, is genuinely dangerous in a way most of us never have to think about when we get in a car. Kamchatka learned exactly how dangerous on the 6th of July, 2021. A twin-engine Antonov AN-26, operated by the local Kamchatka aviation enterprise, was on a scheduled flight into Palana, carrying 28 people, ordinary residents and crew, making the everyday journey home. On its approach to the town, in poor visibility, the aircraft struck a coastal cliff and went down near the shore. There were no survivors. All 28 people were killed. For a town of only around 3,000, losing 28 people on the single lifeline that connects them to the world was a catastrophe that touched nearly everyone. It's a brutal reminder that in this part of Kamchatka, the thing we take for granted, simply getting to the next town, can be the most dangerous thing you do all year. And still, people stay. They raise families, run the local government, keep the Koryak language and traditions alive, and accept that their entire connection to the outside depends on whether a plane can get through. That's the trade every community out here makes. But humans aren't the only ones living on this peninsula. And to understand Kamchatka, you have to meet the other residents, the ones that outnumber the people in some valleys, and that everyone here plans their lives around. If there's one thing that explains why anyone ever settled this violent, roadless peninsula, it's what comes up the rivers every summer. Kamchatka is one of the greatest strongholds of wild salmon left on the planet. Depending on the year, something like a fifth to a quarter of all the wild Pacific salmon on Earth are born in Kamchatka's rivers, and all the main Pacific salmon species spawn here. Every summer, millions upon millions of fish pour in from the ocean and fight their way up the rivers to breed. That run is the engine of the whole region, it feeds people, it's the backbone of the fishing industry, and for the indigenous communities, it has been the center of life for thousands of years. But people aren't the only ones who show up for the salmon. Kamchatka holds one of the densest populations of brown bears anywhere in the world. Estimates run into the many thousands, commonly cited between around 10 and 20,000 animals across the peninsula. These are the enormous Kamchatka brown bears, among the largest brown bears on Earth. When the salmon are running, the bears line the rivers to feast, and at places like Kural Lake in the south, one of the most important sockeye salmon nurseries in the world, you can see dozens of bears fishing the same water at once. Living alongside that many giant predators is simply part of daily reality here. In remote settlements and out on the land, people organize around the bears. They're careful with food and waste, cautious on the trails, and always aware that they are sharing this place with an animal that can weigh as much as a small car. It's not a zoo and it's not a safari, it's the neighborhood. A child growing up in a Kamchatka village learns about bears the way a city child learns about traffic. This is the deal Kamchatka offers. The same wild, unmanaged, roadless emptiness that makes life so hard is exactly what makes it one of the last places on Earth where salmon and bears still exist on this scale. People here don't live despite the wilderness. They live inside it, on its terms. And that brings us to the biggest term of all, the ground itself, and what it did to this peninsula just last year. Everything you've seen, the volcanoes over the city, the hot springs heating Esso, the isolation, the danger, all of it comes from one fact. Kamchatka sits directly on the Pacific Ring of Fire, right where one great slab of the Earth's crust grinds down beneath another. That collision is what built the peninsula, and it's what makes it one of the most geologically alive places on the entire planet. Kamchatka carries more than 160 volcanoes, with around 29 of them still active, including Kluchevskaya Sopka, which at roughly 4,750 meters, over 15,000 feet, is the tallest active volcano in the entire northern hemisphere. So many volcanoes are packed onto this one peninsula that they're protected together as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. To live here is to live on ground that is genuinely, physically alive. And on the 29th of July, 2025, that ground reminded everyone exactly what that means. Off the coast, near Petropavlovsk, a colossal earthquake struck, measured at magnitude 8.8, which ties it as one of the 6 most powerful earthquakes ever recorded by scientific instruments in human history. The shaking hit the city hard. Buildings cracked, power and phone lines went down, and roughly 1,400 homes were damaged. Tsunami warnings raced outward across the entire Pacific Ocean, as far as Japan, Hawaii, and the coasts of the Americas. Then the volcanoes answered. In the days after the quake, Kamchatka Sopka erupted, and so did others, until at one point Russian scientists reported 7 of Kamchatka's volcanoes erupting at the same time, something that had not been seen on this peninsula in nearly 300 years. One volcano, Krasheninnikov, roared to life for the first time in roughly 6 centuries. Imagine that. Your home region is hit by one of the strongest earthquakes in recorded history, and then, all around you, 7 mountains catch fire at once. And here is the part that says everything about the people of Kamchatka. Despite the sheer scale of it, the city held. There was no mass loss of life in Petropavlovsk. The injuries were limited, the buildings that mattered mostly stood, and within days, people were cleaning up and carrying on. They did not leave. Because for the people who live here, this is simply the price of the place. The same forces that could destroy them are the ones that heat their homes, fill their rivers with fish, and raise the most spectacular landscape on Earth outside their windows. They have made peace with living on a peninsula that is still, quite literally, under construction. That's what makes Kamchatka so hard to look away from. We tend to assume people live where life is easy, where the roads reach, where the ground is still, where the supermarket is around the corner. And then there's this, an entire population of nearly 300,000 people, on a volcanic peninsula with no road to the rest of their own country, heating their homes with volcanoes, flying to their capital on planes that sometimes don't make it, sharing their rivers with 20,000 bears, and staying put even after one of the biggest earthquakes in history tried to shake them loose. They don't live at the edge of the map by accident. For them, this impossible, roadless, erupting place is simply home. So here's my question for you. Knowing everything it takes to survive out here, could you actually live in Kamchatka? And which part would break you first? The isolation, the bears, or the ground that never stops moving? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey to the edge of Russia, check out my videos on the most impossible to reach places in Russia and Siberia, and the most isolated corners of the planet on Google Earth. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.